Hello everybody, my name is Red Wolf Does Game Dev, and today I'll be showing you on how to make a simple interactor in Unity. Now for this video I've already gotten myself a prefab from the Unity Asset Store for a mini first-person controller that'll allow us to walk around and interact with stuff more easily. I'll be linking this in the description below. But for this interaction script to interact with objects, we will start off by creating a folder, call it scripts. This is where you will store your scripts. And then in the scripts folder, I'll make a new folder called interactions. This is where we'll store all files related to interacting. First off, we will need to make a mono behavior script called Interactor. This is the script which will allow us to build the interaction code, and then after that we'll make a second script, and this one will be named whatever you want really. So let's start up and open the Interactor script. Just double click that and that'll bring us right here to the Visual Studio that we'll be using to write our code in. Now, first off, we'll start off by making an interface. We're going to call this interface interact. There we go. And then in interface interactable, we are going to put public void interact, like this. The reason why we made the public void interact function up here is because when we add the interface interactable to another script, this is going to force us to use the interact function. And if we find a game object, we're going to look for that in update in a second. If we find a game object that has interactable, we are going to know that the interact is going to be in there, and this interact, this is actually a function. This is what is actually going to allow us to interact properly with said object. Now let's get on to actually casting rays to find the interactable. Before we can cast the rays, however, we are going to need a source to cast the ray from. Now you might think we could do this with a game object, but no, actually we need the transform of said game object. So we're going to need transform, and we're going to call this interact source. This is the position from which we will be interacting. And to actually be able to set said transform, we're going to make a serialize field in front of this. We're using serialize field because it is somewhat safer than public transform interact source, because public transform interact source would allow you to edit the object in here even after the game has been compiled, and you can do this in your game files. Serialize field blocks that and only allows it to be done in the Unity editor. So we need serialize field transform interact source. Now, because we don't want to make an infinitely long ray cast, we're also going to make a serialized field. Serialize field, and we're going to call this a float, and this float is going to be interact range. This is going to be the maximum length that the ray can be. Now we're going to make a ray. We're going to call this ray R, and this is going to be a new ray. Now a new ray is going to need some values inside of it, namely the source. So we're going to call this interact source dot position, because we need this position, and what direction from what direction we have to send the ray. So now in our case that's going to be interact source dot forward. So what this basically does is this creates a new ray on the source position, so that's going to be the camera for us, and it's going to be facing forwards. Next up, we are going to call an if statement. If, this is where we start actually properly casting the ray. Physics dot raycast. So here we cast the ray R to be specific, and then we're going to get out the information from the raycast hit, and we're going to call this info. You can call this hit info, it's all the same. This is just going to be another variable we will be calling upon. And then herein we put the interact range. So we're going to make another if. Inside this if, we are going to go to the info, the raycast hit we just got. We are going to get the collider, what it just collided with. We are going to get the game object it collided with. And from that game object, we are going to try to get a component. And this component is going to be out interactable interact object. This is now this interactable, this interactable right here, is the interactable that is on the object that we're going to try to interact with. Now inside this if statement, we are going to do another if, and this is to be able to interact proper. So if input dot get key down, so when you press the key, and then we'll just do key code dot e, and then we can finally go interact object dot interact. This is where we call this statement up here. And that is everything for this simple this simple interactor to work. Now we're going to make a new script over back in Unity. Back here in Unity. And we're going to, before we make that script, we're going to get ourselves a 3D object, a cube. Let's reset its position, move it up a bit, and move it out here. And on this cube here, we are going to put a new script that we are simply going to call cube interaction. I'm calling this simply cube interaction because it's a cube and we're interacting with it. This can be named whatever you want. I just keep it simple like this. Cube interact, double click that, and open the script. There we go. Now in here, we don't need the update, we don't need start. Instead, we are going to go here behind mono behavior. We're going to put a comma and we're going to put interactable. This is the interface we just made, and it's going to throw an error because we don't have public void interact. Now in here we can do debug.log, and in the debug.log we can write I got interacted with. Save that. Go back to Unity. Give it a second to compile. We'll drag the cube interact onto the cube. Empty here. I'm going to call this managers or manager because we're only making a single quote-unquote manager. This is not even a proper manager. And we're going to call this interact manager. There are people who are going to tell you to put this on the camera instead, but I'd prefer not to. Let's give it an interaction range of 2, and let's drag our camera onto the interact source. Let's open the console and let's start the game. And there you go. If you now press E on the cube, you can see in the console I got interacted with. And that is the very basics of making an interaction script and working interactions in Unity. I hope you had use of this tutorial, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.